joining us. We're going to have Ron Paul with us until about 55 after today, unless the bell rings and he's got to go vote. We appreciate him joining us. I'm just not going to mince words. I'm going to go through a laundry list of issues. Congressman, as you know, the FCC has said they want to start taking over the Internet, the Federal Communications Commission. We also have the Federal Trade Commission saying they want to start taxing the Internet and literally funding old-line media. That sounds like it violates the First Amendment and so many others. We have Kagan with her anti-First Amendment statements about disappearing speech that the government finds to be hurtful. As long as the government feels it's a moral reason, they can restrict our speech. We've got the Federal Election Commission coming after Campaign for Liberty, as you put out in your press release yesterday, saying you can't put out letters telling people how members of Congress have voted. I mean, this is 180 degrees the opposite of what our country was founded on. I can't even believe this is happening. Can you speak to that and where this is going?
Well, it's going in the wrong direction, obviously, and that is what I understand about Campaign for Liberty. They've had somebody at least make a charge and file a complaint that there was a violation, but it probably won't hold up, hopefully. But the whole idea that people think they can and harass you and you go through this legal maneuvering, because that is the goal of many, is to control us. I think the main goal is also to control the Internet. They're very interested in that. The other day we had it sounded like a pretty benign vote. It was under suspension, and that was to praise the idea that government and private entities would study and work together on how to provide cyber security. And I don't know if there was anybody else that voted against it. I voted against it just on this principle that we don't need that. We don't need this private sources cooperating with the federal the government forces in order to have cyber security. I don't think the government's interested in our security. They're interested in their security. But, yes, I think everything is going, especially with this administration, is going in the wrong direction. And I've always been fearful of them wanting to take over the Internet. You know, they've made this announcement that, you know, if necessary, they might even just close down the Internet, which would be devastating to all of us.
Well, that's what Lieberman said on CNN. He said, China has this power, we need it, and I would imagine they'll shut it down a few times, but turn it right back on and say, see, we saved it.
Unfortunately, I'm afraid that could very well happen.
Well, expanding on that, two things, and I want your specific take on this, Congressman Ron Paul. We appreciate you joining us today. This shows that we're really having an effect, that they're harassing Campaign for Liberty, that they're openly coming out and saying they want to restrict free speech, put taxes, quote, on conspiracy theories. And Cass Sunstein at the White House, the regulations are said, like anthropogenic global warming. If you deny that, maybe we should tax you or fine you. I mean, the fact that they want to shut us up shows that we're gaining ground, A, and B, doesn't it reveal to everyone just how tyrannical these people really are?
Yeah, I think it does, and it's a real job to sort all this out, because sometimes people think that all we need are a couple more Republicans and that'll solve the problem, but that's not necessarily the case. But right now, it's the Democrats who are in charge, and they're the ones who are, you know, wanting to radicalize this whole thing. And we know that that is the agenda of many, you know, in the establishment, and that is more government control and less personal freedom, more taxes, the whole mess that we've been fighting. But I still, you know, hold out that the people are waking up, and it may well be that the opposition, that is the government, is getting very concerned that the people are becoming alert from all that has been done in the freedom movement.
Well, Senator DeMitt reported that 94% of Senate bills are not read. I know the number in the House is similar. And so 94% of the bills aren't even looked at. Special interests are writing them. We've had an offshore corporate coup. And then separately, they passed the law in the House, 2 days ago, to not let, quote, special interests tell you how someone has voted months before an election, a restriction of free speech.
Yeah.
So they're not reading the bills, and they don't want us to know how they voted. And the FEC is trying to keep Campaign from Liberty from being able to tell people how folks voted. I mean, this really is tyranny.
Well, yes, and they want to make sure that independent organizations and corporations can't spend their money or tell people how they vote. But, there are corporations, and this is where I think you can fall into the category, because if you run a newspaper or you have a TV show, that's a corporation, can be a corporation, but they're not going to regulate them. So if there is an organization or a political action committee or a private group or corporation who wants to tell people how they vote, no, you might be restricted. But they never think for a minute they should restrict the media, assuming that the media is always going to be radical left and defend their candidates. But, there's just a few people on cable and radio and other places that the way I would understand what they're doing, they still haven't come to trying to regulate what the TV stations are saying or what the radios are saying.
Congressman, going into another very important subject, I almost fell off my chair last Friday when the Washington Post admitted in an article that they're set to pass the financial reform bill. They admitted there's $600 trillion in derivatives. They went on, that was the first time I'd seen that in a mainstream publication, to admit that the Federal Reserve is going to have a new group with almost total autonomy, was their words, to control all other financial institutions. The Texas Banking Association president has said that the very groups that gave us derivatives with an unfair trade advantage for themselves want to be able to take over all the smaller local banks, and that really, out of the crisis, the big mega banks, J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, and others created, they are now going to get even more power over the rest of the economy, and that this is an expanded Federal Reserve coup of America. Can you elaborate on that and give us...
Yeah, and I think you've described it rather well, but that's not the way they claim it is. They claim, well, this is going to protect the consumers. It's not run by the Fed. They don't have authority, but it's going to be in the Federal Reserve. They do not have control over the policy. But guess what? Guess who pays for it? The Federal Reserve pays for it. So it isn't even appropriation. It isn't even, part of the appropriation process. So you have this new regulatory agency supposed to protect the consumer, but I think it's going to protect the special interests that have had all the benefits and then got bailed out. So it's this package, which passed the House yesterday, is very bad for all of us, and it does give more power to all the regulators, and especially the Federal Reserve. And I don't know whether you want to talk about it now, but that's where I offered my motion to recommit, dealing with the Audit the Fed bill. Were you up on that?
No, that's exactly where I wanted to go next. I wanted to illustrate for listeners that just joined us that Congressman Ron Paul is here. 20-something years ago in Congress, he couldn't get one co-sponsor, and I wanted to make this point. It seems the House and Senate are schizophrenic. The House votes by 2/3 to pass your bill to truly audit the quasi-governmental banking holding company, the Federal Reserve, that took over in 1913, but then, which is the right thing to do, but it never passed the Senate properly. And then now they're back giving the Federal Reserve even more power outside of government and Congress to regulate themselves. I mean, this is amazing. So break that oxymoron down for us and tell us about your new amendment.
Well, it tells you about the hypocrisy of this whole place and how it works and how powerful the Fed is. You're right. We passed it in the Financial Services Committee, the Audit the Fed bill, and it was part of the reform package. Then it came to the House floor, and they kept it in, so the House floor supported it. We have 320 co-sponsors. Then it goes to the conference with the Senate, and they drop it. They put some things in there to look at the Fed, which are slightly helpful, but they get rid of the true audit. So when the bill comes back to the House, guess what? We don't have the audit bill provision in there. So I was able to offer an amendment, which was a recommitment amendment, to send it back to committee and put back in the true audit. And we had an up and down vote on that, and we lost it by a significant amount. 320 co-sponsor, and we lost it. 114 people who were co-sponsors of this bill switched and voted against the bill that they were co-sponsors of.
And now they've got the Feds sicked on Campaign for Liberty and every other organization so that you can't tell the public that they flip-flopped and engaged in treason. They know that there's been a major political realignment, not left or right, but towards the Constitution, and that all incumbents across the country are either losing or on the verge of losing in the primaries, and they are scared to death, and they're trying to stop us from being able to communicate to them the truth. This is treason against our way of government and our life.
I don't think they're going to stop the information from getting out. It's, the internet is at the moment still too big. They can't control it. People are going to find out, and they still have access to government records, and they can find out who those 114 individuals were who flipped on this vote. And, if we're worth our salt and this message, this issue is important, it will play a role in the elections this fall.